There we go. Hello and welcome back, everyone. It is Suzanne with another episode of Energy Unleashed with my co-host, Kim Hess.
Hello, everybody.
How are ya?
I'm good.
Don't say fine, because you always say
I always say good. I'm good.
You know what? One of these
good.
times you're just going to go, I feel like crap. How about you?
But I don't today, so I'm not going to say that.
No, you look
Which, by the way, God, your hair is really, really cute. I'm sure.
Oh, this is probably one of the first times they're seeing me with no hair.
Look at the hair. Oh my God, it's adorable.
Yes, this was a statement to myself to just make a drastic change in life. And so, yeah, this is probably the first episode where they're going to see me wondering if it's a ponytail, and it's not.
It's chopped off. It's so cute.
I do have to say it was very, this was a little exercise in ego, meaning I was having some challenges over the last couple of years that I just wanted to walk away from and technically cut out of my life. And I figured what better way to do that and to make a drastic change. And I do have to say, I am 63 years old and I sat down in that chair. I don't think I've ever had this short of hair since I was a kid. And the last time I even had short hair was 32 years ago. I know.
I've never seen you in short hair before. It's always been like the shortest you've gone is like right in.
Yeah. So that first cut was like, holy bananas. I thought I was going to kind of have a little, moment.
We should have been talking about this in the solar plexus one, for God's sake.
I actually sat in the chair with my eyes closed. I'm like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. So we did the kind of queer eye thing where they turn you around and then it was like, holy crap, So yeah, it was fun.
No, you did great. I love it.
Yeah. And we'll see how different we can make it every time just for yucks. So
well, it's fun to see your earrings because you always have really cute earrings.
Right. And I have a really cute little ear clip guy I can wear once in a while named Bernie. So yeah, it's just new. It's different. We talked about inertia a little earlier. We did one on the solar plexus and inertia being bored. And I think that was it. This grew from inertia. So what the heck, right?
That's awesome. I love it.
I keep saying it's only hair. So alrighty, these are the Energy Unleashed podcasts, besides the chakra system ones, are basically summarizations of some of my client sessions that I have as an energy practitioner, and I bring forward some of their information with their approval, anonymous, of course, and then have Kim unleash it with me, meaning dig deeper into it. And this one is kind of interesting because I worked with this client before, but a kind of new element came forward this week, and it was just super fun and I think timely. We are going through the ascension process, and our dimensional fields are changing, and each of our dimensional fields has what we call gatekeepers, or beings that kind of hold down that dimensional field. And oftentimes we as humans will find ourselves gravitating towards one of those fields a little bit more or a little bit less or whatever. And the second dimension of our existence has the gatekeepers of the plant and animal kingdom, the elementals themselves. And a lot of people are finding themselves gravitating more towards that elemental kingdom and activating and waking up to that, because in my opinion, this kingdom has been shut down for a very long time in a lot of ways, keeping us as humans in the third dimension away from Mother Earth, who's in the first dimension. So it goes like this. Dimension one is earth, wind, water, fire, planetary existence. 2 is plant and animal kingdom, the elementals themselves. 3 is humanity. And the nefarious agenda was to cut off number 2 so that we couldn't necessarily energetically connect to Mother Earth's heart. Because if we were connected to Mother Earth's heart, we would feel nurtured, we would feel loved, we would not have this worry of separation of source. And so this has been cut off for a really long time, and light workers have been restructuring the actual hologram in that area. Therefore, this kingdom is coming more alive. Does that even make some sense?
It does, but I'm curious why we can see other animals and we cannot see that kind of that, like the fairies and gnomes and trolls.
That's a super good question. I'm going to wing that because I don't absolutely know for sure. But what I'm getting when I hear that is that the animals that we currently see and the trees and the flowers are still dummied down, that the elementals have escaped that nefarious agenda. The true elementals, the gnomes, the fairies, the sylphs, the undines, these are all the names from all the water fire is salamanders, water is undines, sylphs is air, gnomes is earth. They all have these little gatekeepers. And I think because they're magical and they live in the magical kingdom of 2D, they were not necessarily brought forward into this dummied down eons and eons. So yes, we see a cat, we see a bear, we see a tree, but they don't talk to us. They can't interact with us. They have been enslaved by this programming for a very long time. And so I'm getting that they will be leaving planet eventually also and coming back much more engaged with the higher engaged humans, so that by the time we all evolve into this 5D realm, we will indeed be having conversations, whether that be telepathically or not, with the plant and animal kingdom.
I was just going to say, it must be telepathic that you have that connection and that ability to communicate with them.
And we can do that a little bit now. If your psychic senses are pretty high and your telepathy is good, you can hear animals, you can hear some of the trees and the rocks and such. But those that are not activating their skill set are not even approaching that. And those animals that haven't been activated are the ones that we just see as an animal. So I think that it's all going to evolve over time. And a lot of people, by the way, have been losing their pets. And this is part of it too. Of course, that's sad because they're our family as well. But these beings are going back to source energy to come back to planetary existence at a higher level of frequency, hence being able to connect with us better. So I think eventually we will be opening the doors to the Sasquatches, to the fairies, to the little stinker gnomes, to the, you know, they're everywhere. And I have been fortunate enough to see them in my work and in my life, not always, but I have, and they are amazing. So do you see any of that? I guess I've never really asked you that.
I have the only time that it, fairies, and it was in the basement of the Palmer house. You activated they were more like, orbs.
Yes.
Like bouncing around.
In dots. Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very cool. But out in nature, I feel like I see stuff out of my peripheral vision, and I don't know what it is. Like, what was that? I don't totally see them full on.
And the deva, which is that activation consciousness of within the whatever, the rock, the tree, the whatever, that deva will oftentimes come to us as an orb, because that's how they transport, that's how they move, that's how they change. And sometimes they'll just stay that orb, and other times they will be able to manifest into something deeper. So those little ones come to peripheral because you're not concentrating so hard and you're not worrying about it. And so oftentimes we will see them here, because when we're direct sight, we're all worried about seeing something, you know. It's almost like we all got to go sky watching out of the side of our head, you know. So yeah, interesting. So this whole field of 2D is becoming more activated. But I wanted to point out a couple of fun things. When this particular person was here, she, I believe, was very, very active in the field when she was a child, which oftentimes happens. We can see the fairies, we can feel them, because we believe in magic, right? And I think that got put away as she had kind of a difficult upbringing in life, etc. And now, though, she finds herself, and these are the indicators, she finds herself very gravitating towards the Lords of the Rings kind of characters. You know, this can even eke into sort of Game of Thrones with the dragons. This can be all of the fairy kingdoms that we see on those things. Lots of anime and cartoons have a lot of this stuff as well, you know, the Avatar and all of that. So these are the indicators that if I really love that, I love the dragons, I love I love the angels, I love the fairies. These are all indicators that maybe this is the kingdom that you connect with the most. And in her case, it was this. So I was doing her session on her, not really thinking, I've known her for quite some time, but not really thinking too much that she was really prominent with this field or this dimension. And during her session, I kept getting the funniest these little gnome faces. Now, true gnomes do not look like the Travelocity gnome. They don't have the white hair and the big pointy red hat and the blue coat. You know, that's a gimmick. True gnomes are not terribly attractive. They have these big funny noses, and they have these funny hair, you know, these funny hats. Brian Froud is one of the best, I think, artists of all time for the true gnome and fairy. And I highly suggest look up his Heart of Fairy tarot, because it's really good. And you can even Google it, images for Brian Froud's Heart of Fairy or just Fairy Tarot. and they'll come up even on a Google search, and you can sit with those and see. Oftentimes the sylph, for example, is just a whoosh, but she kind of still looks like a bit of a fairy. And
Yeah.
these are the things that I see when I work, but these gnomes were cracking me up. And I mean, I'm like, they're not attractive. And they're these big, funny, and they're squatty little things. And they hide in the mushrooms, and they hide in the base of the trees, and they hide in the bushes and the ferns. And, they're in the dirt, and they're in the rocks. And these are the little people that they talk about in like Ireland, for example. And we'll have all kinds of places and spaces in like Scotland or where Wales that have the little people, and they talk about them all the time. These are in actuality a frequencer or a deva that is very, very powerful. And I wanted to bring them forward because they don't look like the one in Walmart. They don't look like what you put your statue in the garden of at all, right?
No, they're not cute like that.
So when they come in, they always also are a bit of a trickster. And that's what I wanted to talk about, because this particular client, I love her dearly, but she thrives on chaos. And she's going through some really challenges right now with changes in her spiritual journey. And she's been in chaos most of her life with family issues and stuff. Her brain goes 100 miles an hour. She's always go, 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 go. And she has a really hard time trusting the calm. Okay. She has a very difficult time knowing that I can trust easy. I have a really hard time, I have a really hard time thinking I can just be gifted ease and grace. That kind of thing is what was coming out of her mouth, because she didn't understand why that was not in her life comfortably. And when all these gnomes came through in her healing, it was like, well, that's why, because your life is chaotic, because these little stinkers are everywhere and they like to jack with your energy field. So chaos is very almost comfortable for her. Does that make any sense at all to you?
Well, it does, but I'm curious about how they, actually impact her energy like that. Like what is she open? Or is it?
She's got some really decent psychic skills. I think that she's cracked open some. She doesn't see them. She just feels, she's sentient. She feels.
Yeah.
But I think what she feels is the agitation or the overwhelm. A lot of times these will come in gaggles or groups, and they'll dick with things in your house. I say, do things move in your house? Do you, all of a sudden your glasses were over here and now they're over here and you weren't even wearing them yet, and I mean, things like, okay,
you're losing it because you thought they were over there, and now it's like, yeah, did I move those? Yeah.
Or where the heck is that necklace that I love so much? And then 3 months later or 3 days later, it's right there on your dresser. And you're like, okay, seriously? That's how these little stinkers work. And they love the sprites. This is another version of them, love to dick around with things in your house. And I had a neighbor here from years back who was having so much paranormal activity, or so she thought. And it wasn't ghost energy at all. It was all these little stinkers in the woods, because they had cleared out a huge amount of trees and they were pissed. They were mad.
So yeah, wow.
So they started dicking with her stuff, including her animals, and her dogs were losing their minds and they're staring off into the corner and they're rah, 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 and there's nothing there. And this poor client was like, I'm losing my marbles. I think I'm being haunted. And I'm like, you're not haunted by anything other than these little stinkers. They're like little gremlins.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine that feel of that energy and that constant, like, what is happening?
Yeah. And it will jack the energy of your house up as well, because they're constantly wanting attention. So why I wanted to bring this one forward and unleash it a little bit is to give some ideas to people, because this is what I did with the neighbor here. And I told the client the other day, make an altar if you choose, and take what resonates here as always, but make an altar in your home if you have the ability, in terms of, especially maybe in the kitchen area, because for some whatever reason they like that area. I think it's because people are in there and they're busy a lot. But, an altar doesn't have to be like some grandiose thing. An altar can literally be like, I have a candle or a cute little talisman or a rock or a jewel or a gem. But what you alter further, meaning what you give as gratitude, are things like, I'm going to put an orange in there today. Today, I'm going to put, an acorn. Tomorrow, I'm maybe going to put a piece of cheese. And, you're rotating these. It's very much about gratitude, and I'm acknowledging you. And at the same time, I'm asking you to stay here with your energy instead of jacking up everything in my existence.
Oh my gosh. So that actually works. Like, did this work for your neighbor?
It definitely worked for my neighbor. It
Oh,
definitely worked. And I think you have to also have intention and be grateful and be aware and be present with it and pull your boundaries a little bit. Like, you're not going to touch my glasses, and it's not scary, it's command. It's like anything else that's paranormal. So, but it's really not paranormal, but it is, but it isn't, because it's really a fairy and a gnome, and it's not like a ghost, you know.
so
But
interesting.
it's hard. It's hard to understand that they're here, but they're not here. They're
Yeah,
just at a level or frequency that is vibrating different, that you can't see them.
right.
But oftentimes you can feel them. So she will feel the chaos that they cause in her life. That will transform into chaos in her life, because that's her normal. And it has been like this for this woman since she's a child. So
Oh
she
my,
doesn't know how to not do chaos.
this will be so strange if it works and she doesn't no longer feels that vibrational chaos. Like, what is that going
Yep.
to be like for her to transform into?
It's going to be tough, because a lot of people believe chaos is power,
Yeah,
first of all,
right.
right? They feel like if everything's chaotic and I'm doing 500 things at once, I must be amazing. But
Mhm.
what we don't understand is I'm not doing 500 things or one or two things even well, because I've got 500, right? So it's a confusion on power. And I think that's going to be super interesting for this particular person, is to gonna go, okay, what does the calm mean? How can I sit here and just go, I'm just going to be calm right now and not feel like, you know, it's really hard. It's really
Be a
hard.
major change.
It's going to be a transition for her. It's going to be really different. So I I am excited to see. I also said to her, maybe what you want to do is you want to put a altar in the yard as well. So we can do inside and outside.
Right.
So an altar in the yard can be super cute, because there's so many fun fairy things, right? I mean, you could have Fairyland from what, Bachman's or whatever we got here that sells all that stuff, Michael's craft store or whatever. You can put all that stuff outside, and they love that as well. But I do encourage to highly interact with things that are on not a daily basis, but on a weekly basis, where you're putting something fresh. It's a flower. When it's dead, remove it, so that you're actually being, you know, present,
Respectful. Yeah, and present.
respectful. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you do that with
So
your granddaughter at the cabin. You
yeah,
know,
we do. We have a fairy house. Yeah. And we go and we get all the fresh flowers, and then she plays and plays, and then respectfully break it down at the end of it. So yeah, fun stuff, but can be very confusing.
yeah, it's so interesting. I want to hear more. Like I want to hear more cases or stories, because this is so, I think that probably all of us have had experiences where we felt something, or like I said, out of the peripheral, but not
Mhm.
making my whole like vibrational body feel chaotic.
I don't think that everybody, however, resonates to the gnome. So you, for example, are a water element. And so
Mhm.
the gnome element wouldn't necessarily jack up your field or your energy quite the same as hers, because this is her fuel. This is her
Right.
place. Okay. So I do have another client that actually works in the same realm, somewhat like this one. However, she doesn't work with the gnomes. She works with the trolls. And this is another element. So the trolls, I want you to think of like the real live, you know, the Billy Goat under the bridge kind of, in the troll. I mean, these are not attractive either. And again, this sounds judgmental. Probably we shouldn't be saying it like this, because if a troll saw us,
But they're like, ooh,
they'd probably go, what the heck is that? You know, oh, that's not attractive.
that's
So in
terrible.
their world, they're probably very attractive. So I guess we'll change that verbiage. But these are the more scraggly and the more kind of like this, but they are also very much about the dark energy. Troll clients that I've had are very much about, I don't want to be around people. I don't even like people. I don't even know why I'm on this planet, because I hate people. And they do not like to be around people. They love animals, they love nature, but they don't like people. And so if a troll or a, you know, kind of like an elemental person really doesn't like people, please honor that, because that's not necessarily who you're supposed to be working with in terms of true relationships. You can still have relationships, but they can be somewhat what we would call maybe superficial, because your real relationship is supposed to be with these elementals.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so even if it's a troll, we will find ourselves honoring the fact that I don't even like the sunlight. I like the dark. I feel like people think that I'm depressed because I like my room dark and I don't want to come out and hang out. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're depressed. Now, obviously, if there's a clinical depression situation, figure that out. But I'm talking about the essence of these people is I don't want to deal with everybody because it's just not my thing. I like it dark. I like it sometimes even, I hate to say moist or wet because it's not like they're sitting in a cave, but it's just that whole feeling of I don't need the sunshine. I don't need that wind on me. I just don't need any of that.
Well, that's interesting. So then when you look at all of the different types of creature, what do you call them? Creatures or
Elementals, I would stick. Yeah.
All right, elementals. So when you do fire,
Mm-hmm.
when you do all the different, so if I resonate with water, what am I resonating with?
Yours is called the Undine. So it's Undine, and they're like a little teeny tiny mermaid of sorts. So this is also why you love the mermaid, because the Undine is just this little teeny tiny. And again, Brian has some great art. I don't think he specifically has undines, but you can just see that they're basically light.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you'll almost get the little wiggle of a tail, whereas if it's a sylph, you'll get the wiggle of the wings, and when I see fairy energy, especially when I'm working with a client, I can literally in my third eye see the wing very dominantly when it's a fairy energy. So these are they're deva energies, meaning the power within, the power of the element within. And they do look different and they act different. The salamander is kind of a little snaky thing that comes out of and it looks a little dragonish and it comes out of the fire. You can actually scry those fairly easy. We'll have to try.
I've seen those. Those are amazing.
Yeah.
When you
they'll through the fire.
Yeah. It's very cool. I've seen those.
You can also get those, Kim, off of a candle scrying. If you practice with a candle, you can get the flame on the candle, look through the flame, around the flame, at the flame, but not like this at the flame. You're looking all through the flame. And that fire salamander will kind of like sprout right off of the flame like that. And you'll get several of them. And it's fascinating. I mean, I think that's one of the coolest ones is the salamander. You're just like, oh my God, much less a bonfire. Obviously, that's
really fire air person. So that's but I do know people I have met, like there are people that feel like fairies. There are people that now that I'm like you explain the gnomes, I think I know people.
Oh yeah, you're gonna go, oh my God, you're such a gnome.
Oh my God, you're a gnome or you're a
troll.
Like what is I love that association that you've made on what they are. You take the characteristic of
the troll people, and I'm not joking, they're kind of down here because they don't want to be up here looking at people. They're just kind of trying to go under the radar
and under
the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And people do adapt to and take on those characteristics because it's their essence of who and what they are. And I think it's fascinating. The really hard part is if we don't honor this stuff, we think something's wrong. For example, the troll, thank goodness, this is a teenager. Thank goodness the mother is very aware of energy, period. And when I told them, and she helps this daughter with energy and understands more things than your normal, like,
mm-hmm.
what would that be? Maybe junior high age kid, if they're not made aware of this or have context for it. And you start wondering, why is my daughter sitting in a room in the dark all the time? You're probably dragging her off to a psychologist or a psychiatrist because she has massive depression, and she doesn't. She doesn't at all. This is just her realm, So thank goodness this mother actually has the wherewithal to understand the concept and work with the daughter in different ways. Now, that said, I would like to bring up, it's also important for us to get some semblance of a balance. We also don't want to be necessarily locked in our room all day just because that's our essence. It is important, in my opinion, as a practitioner, to balance that out and to also find, okay, I'm going to ramp up my whatever. So me, for example, I'm air and fire way dominant. I can do earth just fine. Water was, So I took a long time to work with water, and I didn't care for it. And I do a lot of work up at the cabin working with the wave patterns and things like that. So it took extra work for me to find that balance with the water, because eventually we want all of them balanced. So we're grabbing ether, meaning we're grabbing everything.
Which it took me a long time to start to work with fire. I had a lot of fear of fire for some reason.
Isn't that funny that's probably why we're friends, because our opposites are, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I constantly work with fires so that I become more comfortable with it.
Yeah. So you're water and earth, and I'm air and fire. That is really funny.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I never thought that through. Wow. Yeah, compliment. So I think this is just kind of a fun one, in that, trickster and chaos, and being able to work with that and dial it down. You do have the ability to command them out, just like any other paranormal situation. However, I think that would be really difficult, and I don't know if anyone really needs to. That's all personal choice, obviously. But I think that it's very easy to work with these elementals in terms of gratitude and awareness and just acknowledgement, right? I mean, that's part of who we are and what we're doing here. And so I think that that's fun. And yeah, it will help this client eventually understand, I can trust ease and grace. The more I find ease and grace within myself and my own vibrational frequency in my surroundings, then I can start to do things like I can trust meditative time or quiet time or whatever.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's
that's
spiritual growth.
Transformation for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. This is so good. Well, do you have your deck in front of
I
you?
have to disappear off of the screen for 2 seconds. It's
Oh,
right.
You don't have to do it then. It's fine. You give
It's
us
it's out of reach. Anyway, you can look it up. It's Brian, BRIANFROUD. And yeah, it's a great deck. It's a fun deck. And he also has the pressed fairy books. That's who I started with. I started with no, I don't know if he did pressed fairy book. Maybe he did. I started with his calendars. I started with all kinds of different things that he had done. He's got the Mean Fairies and the Nice Fairies book, or Bad Fairies and Good Fairies, or whatever it's called, which is a fascinating book too, because it flips, one side is the good fairies and one side is bad, when you flip up the book upside down. And I had my granddaughter over one time, and she's pretty small at that point, and she was like, oh, those bad fairies, I don't like them, because they're not nice looking at all. Now, is a bad fairy a bad fairy? Not necessarily. That's all context and words, right? But we certainly are aware that they don't look like what we think they look like. Right. And again, they might think we're ugly. So I think that's
and his artwork is, I've seen that at your place before. What Brian's artwork is amazing.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's got stuff all over the internet. All you have to do is Google him and stuff will pop up all over the place. But I think it's interesting to open your head up to that, because they're not Keebler elves, they're not gnomes from Travelocity. They're not what we think that they are. And they're these wonderful, lovely little creatures that look like what they should look like. And I think that they did a great job in Lord of the Rings with the trolls.
Yeah.
The actual trolls in there. And I remember when I was watching Lord of the Rings for the very first time, I was completely immersed when the scene of the fairy realm came into the action. It was like when they went to the fairy realm. I don't know what series that was or whatever, but when they hit that fairy realm, and it was in the side of the mountain, and every ounce of my being goes, I know that space. And I've done that several times. That's why if you are one of these people and you want to activate your senses more, I always suggest to my clients, surround yourself with those things. Go watch Lord of the Rings. I zip through the orcs because I hate that part, and I hate the warring, and I hate the fighting. And I just zip through all of the icky stuff and go to the places that feed my soul. And I will do the same thing with like Mists of Avalon or anything like that that's magical. And then I just, go through the wars, because that isn't why I'm doing it. It's to remember what your body knows from other planetary existences or other realms. And your body will automatically respond to that if that's a realm that's important for you.
Yeah, that's so cool. It'll be fun. It'll be a little experiment. I'm going to try.
Yeah, play with it. And lastly, the kids, Lion, Witch in the Wardrobe is another one. The Narnia series will be another one that really activates the trees and the rocks, and they come to life. And in my opinion, someday when we are fully online in this 5D, that will be the case, so that we're communicating and using them as beings instead of just having them as pets.
Right.
Right.
They're all here with me. Oh, my rocks.
Right. All right. Well, hopefully, any questions on that one, or is that pretty much?
No, I mean, it's so interesting. I think that, I want to know more, but I think it's starting to work with and experiment with all of this.
Play.
Figure it
Just
out.
literally play. And look at fun pictures and keep your mind open. Is what I always like to say.
Yeah, it's just really cool. Awesome. And I love the association between people and their realm. Because as you were doing that, I'm like, I know people that fit in these different realms. So it's really good.
They'll look like it. It's funny. I love that. All righty. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully you can take a nugget from this, toss what doesn't resonate. And as always, hit the like button if you choose to, maybe subscribe, share anything, and maybe even give us a comment. We're here for you.
And recommendations. If you want to know more about something, let us know.
Give us a holler. All right, everyone. Until next, Cosmic Hugs.
Goodbye.